All right. So Hood Conservative brought something up that actually he is correct about. And this is evidenced by Martin Luther King, actually. Protest culture is almost uniquely not really in a way, but the way we think about protest culture is best associated with the British. It is not a black thing. Black people actually were notorious for not protesting for a very, very, very long time. And Martin Luther King and that generation is where that all changed, to the point where there's even music about this. Not just rap music, but soul music of the day. Get Up, Get Into It, Get Involved is a great example of how James Brown confronted the whole idea of the Black Power movement and really was saying, like, don't raise your fist unless you're really doing something, So yes, Hood Conservative, you are correct. This is something that came pretty much out of the socialist and the communist and Marxist influence on black Americans and the quote-unquote civil rights movement. The civil rights movement was really something that was fundamentally a Republican phenomena. That it was Republicans who contiguously, so not continuously, there was no stop. Republicans contiguously argued that black Americans were being denied their fundamental rights as citizens for some form of representation. Because remember, Democrats would pass laws that black people couldn't even hold office. Like, this is a famous issue that, if I remember correctly, went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court itself had to basically give elected black officials back their offices because Democrats basically kicked them out of office by saying that they just they couldn't hold office. Miscegenation laws, another one. You didn't see a whole bunch of black people rioting over miscegenation laws. In fact, actually, when you look back, miscegenation laws, one of the most interesting phrases, really comes from Muhammad Ali, who was an opponent of race mixing. And that this, again, was a set of laws constructed mostly by the Democrats, just like redlining laws in Democratic enclaves. And the protest culture was, it came after, really, World War II. That the only thing I've ever heard of similar to sort of protest culture prior to World War II in the black American community would be Studs Terkel's The Great War reference to a World War I riot on base where white and black soldiers got into some kind of fight, and they ended up calling in the military police on the black barracks. But that's about it. That's the only thing I've ever encountered that would be something like that would be along those lines. I think you're quite correct, Hood Conservative, that it is an outside thing, and I think this is why there is so rarely Asian American protesting. Asian Americans are notoriously averse to protest culture, to the point that even when, say, in San Francisco, California, just before my lifetime, Chinese people could not actually own land in some sections of San Francisco, California. This is like 1968, the laws changed. There was very little historical protests about that law and about that period of time. It's very few lawyers that actually that's what was basically it's associated with, is sort of the rise of the even when we talk about Thurgood Marshall, we're talking about the rise of the diligent lawyer, the quiet, diligent lawyer who just worked hard at making his case. And yeah, and so you're right. Protest culture is something that came in from the outside. It is something that I pretty much associate with the Peasants' Revolt of England and riots in the Jewish ghettos and shtetls of Europe. I don't see it in almost any other. Well, no, and the Irish. The Irish, when they came as laborers, they're one of the other groups. In what we call Scots Irish, even before then, who really we get protest culture from. Yeah. And so, yes, I think you're quite right about this. Now, the idea of, say, shirking, like being like, oh, okay, you're not going to do right by us. Okay. And just not getting the job done very quickly. That is something more Black American, also coming out of the influence of the Scots Irish on Black Americans, because Black Americans really, much of what Black Americans consider Black American Southern culture especially, is actually an extension of the culture of Greater Appalachia. And yeah, of Greater Appalachia. Because too many people don't understand that the big time plantation owners were descended often from an entirely different group of British colonials to the island of Barbados. And to the point that, I mean, you could even find the the vice president of the Confederacy was fundamentally a British Jew, and one of the only Jews in American politics for a very long time. And after the war, he went to France. He went to post-revolutionary France, because post-revolutionary France had no problem with slavery. This is why, the revolution, long live the revolution, and all this shit doesn't mean a goddamn thing, because the French proved that the revolution meant nothing. It just, they just basically became an exceedingly violent people. They became like a completely savage and exceedingly violent people, and especially to their own. But yeah, just I'll put that out there. All right, later.